No.
Have you read any, do you know if the NIH or NIAID track COVID shot injuries or cancers or anything harmful from them?
I am not aware of any harmful tracking, and this is not my area of expertise, no.
What is your area of expertise?
I'm a research psychologist, and I did not work at NIAID.
And you're here for what reason?
I am here to testify about what is happening to the NIH right now.
You're not here to testify about MKUltra?
I am not an MKUltra expert.
Why did the Dems send you here if you're not an MKUltra expert?
But I am an expert in human subjects protection, which is related, and in the conduct of human subjects research.
Okay. But you don't know anything about MKUltra, which is the purpose of this hearing. All right, so I have a couple questions for our witnesses who are here to talk about MKUltra, and thank you, gentlemen, Dr. Kinzer and Mr. O'Neill. What are some of the worst abuses that you're aware of in the MKUltra program?
I can start by just naming, I'll talk about one in particular that always sticks in my mind. In the federal prison in Lexington, Kentucky, a group of African-American inmates was segregated and fed what were described in the protocol as double, triple, and quadruple doses of LSD every day for 77 days.
Did they all survive?
We have no idea what happened to them. This has stuck with me ever since I wrote that book. What happened to them? Did they ever find out what was given to them? Did they think they were going crazy? Did they? I think if the...
Do you think we're still experimenting on prisoners or people in prison today?
I don't have any information about that.
Okay.
I'm hoping there'll be another book about
Mr.
what's
O'Neill,
happening now.
what are some of the worst abuses in MKUltra?
There were many. The Frank Olson case, which was referenced earlier, that was a murder. I don't believe that was a suicide. And the motivation was because he was going to be a whistleblower. He worked at the CIA. He worked in the development of biological weapons, and he was planning to go public and announce that the United States government was using biological weapons in the Korean War. And also he was going to share what he knew about MKUltra experiments, including lethal experiments. And there's a documented case.
How many, gentlemen, how many people do you think died through the MKUltra program or were murdered?
No idea.
What happened in this hearing was bigger than a few uncomfortable questions about MKUltra. It was really a debate about something Americans have been struggling with for decades. Can the public trust the government when the government itself has a history of keeping major secrets? Representative Nancy Mace came into the hearing with questions about COVID, Anthony Fauci, the NIH, and vaccine safety. But Dr. Elizabeth Janexi immediately made one thing clear: she wasn't there as an MKUltra expert. Mace asked her whether she believed the NIH or Dr. Anthony Fauci had misled Americans about COVID. Janexi said no. Mace then asked whether COVID vaccines harmed Americans. Again, Janexi said no. But when Mace asked whether she knew whether the NIH had tracked vaccine injuries or cancers, Janexi acknowledged that this was outside her area of expertise. And that's where the questioning becomes interesting. Because if you're sitting in a congressional hearing about one of the darkest chapters in American intelligence history, and the witness tells you repeatedly, "That's not my area of expertise," what exactly are you supposed to make of that? Now, to be fair to Dr. Janexi, she never claimed to be an MKUltra historian. Her stated expertise was in human subjects research and research protections, and she testified about what she believed was happening at the NIH. So there is a legitimate argument for why she was there. But Nancy Mace clearly wanted something different. She wanted answers about the broader question of government accountability. And then the hearing moved to the people who actually had studied MKUltra. Historian Stephen Kinzer and investigative journalist Tom O'Neill brought the conversation back to the historical record. And this is where the hearing became genuinely disturbing. MKUltra was not some fictional conspiracy invented on the internet. The CIA really did operate the program. Congressional investigations and declassified records have documented experiments involving drugs, psychological manipulation, and human subjects. The House committee itself described evidence that the CIA used unwitting subjects and that an internal CIA inspector general had warned that the program had gone beyond the agency's legal authority. And that matters. The question isn't simply, do you believe conspiracy theories? The question becomes, what exactly did the government do, what documents still remain classified, and what happened to the people who were subjected to these experiments?
If those who died largely were outside the United States, many people were experimented to death in that safe house in Germany that I visited, and people in the neighborhood told me they knew what was going on in that house, and that people who were experimented to death are now buried in what used to be forest plots that are now covered over
Do you think
with
the German
apartments.
government knew what the U.S. government was doing? Do you think there was a partnership there or knowledge?
Yes. There is a memo that was written by the German Secret Service to Konrad Adenauer, the Chancellor of Germany, telling him Americans are here capturing citizens, capturing people and conducting extreme experiments which are in violation of German law. And Adenauer decided to put that aside and not to
I
investigate.
have one more
further.
question because I have 15 seconds. Is this a massive cover-up by the U.S. government?
It's certainly a cover-up of what happened in the past.
Mr. O'Neill?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Representative Mace.
Acknowledge Ms. Boebert for the next round of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to two of our witnesses who are here to actually talk on our subject here today. Mr. Kinzer, in your book, Poisoner in Chief, you describe how Project MKUltra was authorized by CIA Director Allen Dulles in April of 1953 as an umbrella program for research into the covert use of biological and chemical materials for mind control and interrogation. What specific geopolitical and intelligence concerns, particularly regarding alleged Soviet and Chinese, quote, brainwashing and Korean War prisoners, drove this authorization? And how did Cindy Gottlieb's unique background and personality and worldwide view shape the program's direction and methods and ethical boundaries?
Let me start by answering your second question about Gottlieb. He was a very different person from all of the other senior CIA officers of that era. Most of them came from silver spoon backgrounds. They went to the same prep schools and the same Ivy League colleges and belonged to the same yacht clubs and worked for the same law firms and international banks. Sidney Gottlieb was the son of Orthodox Jewish refugees from Central Europe. He had a limp. He had a stutter. He went to Hebrew school. He was so different from all of the other officers. And upon reflection, I think this may not have been an accident. I think that people at the CIA understood that whoever had this job was going to be doing some awful, terrible things that would be very bloody, that they might become known, and it might be necessary to blame it all on somebody. And they didn't want to have to blame it all on one of their own. So Gottlieb actually became the person on whom everything was blamed. In fact, when he testified in secret here in Congress in the 1970s, he complained that there were documents on which various signatures had been redacted, but his alone had remained. So this, again, is a way of diverting attention away from the institutional responsibility of the CIA and trying to blame it on one crazy person. As for the international situation at the time, I think it's very important to understand this because there is a sort of a parallel to today. The CIA misinterpreted several key incidents in the world, including those to which you referred, the trial of the Cardinal Mindszenty, and then in Hungary, and then the return of Korean War prisoners. Neither of those episodes really had to do with mind control, but in the CIA they were interpreted that way. And this gave the CIA a reason to pretend that its research was purely defensive. So I think when you consider the world situation and the sense in Washington that we're surrounded by enemies, that becomes a very dangerous environment. Conspiracy theories stem from the growth of the covert sphere. There's a great contradiction in American life that we pretend to uphold certain principles at home and abroad, but it's evident to many Americans that we actually operate in opposition to those principles.
One of the most disturbing examples discussed during the hearing involved prisoners in Lexington, Kentucky. According to testimony presented by Kinzer, African American prisoners were reportedly given repeated doses of LSD over a prolonged period. There are questions about what became of some of those people. And this is where I think Americans should be careful, but also curious. We should not automatically believe every theory simply because the government has kept secrets. But we also shouldn't automatically dismiss every allegation simply because it sounds unbelievable. History has already shown us that governments can conduct secret programs that ordinary citizens would never imagine. And MKULTRA is one of the clearest examples. Then Stephen Kinzer made an even broader argument. He suggested that the secrecy surrounding programs like MKULTRA helped create the environment where conspiracy theories flourish. When government institutions say, "Trust us," but later documents reveal that those same institutions were hiding serious activities from the public, people naturally begin asking questions. And once trust disappears, it is incredibly difficult to rebuild. You don't have to believe that MKULTRA is still operating today. You don't have to believe every claim about COVID. You don't have to believe every allegation made against the NIH, the CIA, or Anthony Fauci. But you can still recognize something important. Government secrecy has consequences. When records disappear, when information remains classified for decades, and when institutions refuse to answer legitimate questions, the public doesn't simply forget. People start connecting dots. Representative Anna Paulina Luna, who chaired the task force, argued that the American public deserves a complete record of MKULTRA and that the lack of transparency has damaged trust in government. And frankly, that's probably the most important part of this entire hearing. Not whether every modern allegation is true, but whether Americans can finally get enough information to separate documented history from speculation. Because if the government wants people to reject conspiracy theories, there is perhaps one extremely simple solution. Show the evidence. Declassify